All right, Sunita, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you here. I have so much respect and affinity for you as one of my advisors. I don't think I could ever thank you enough for all the advisement that you provided me in terms of, you know, moving to the United States, understanding what I needed to do down here from a tax perspective, understanding how to structure my businesses. Like, honest to God, I don't think there's anything you don't know.
Oh, Lisa, you're very kind and you touched my heart for being so kind.
Well,
Um, Glad I could have helped, and I'm a bit embarrassed with your compliments, but thank you.
you're,
Thank you very much.
you're
Thank you
welcome.
for
I
your
mean
kind
it.
words.
I mean it sincerely. You are incredible at what you do. So you have a degree, like you are actually, I'm just going to look at your bio here. You are a licensed member of the Ontario Bar and the New York State
Correct.
Bar. So like talk to us a little bit about that. Why did you decide to get licensed in two different countries?
I actually I went to law school in Canada. I grew up in Canada, and I've always loved tax. When I went to law school, I've always loved tax while at law school and after law school. When I entered law school, I thought I would do something like international human rights.
Mhm.
But when I started reading criminal cases or any cases that had to do with injury inflicted, whether mentally or physical, I couldn't bear it. It
Mm.
was just something I just couldn't stand. I couldn't read criminal cases without having nightmares. So I realized quickly I was not going to be the hotshot international human rights lawyer. It's a difficult thing to do. It's difficult to watch someone suffer. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean you don't see people suffering in tax. Like, for example, it's very, very easy to get put into structures which makes no sense, to be upsold structures. Also, um, when you're taxed, so I'm jumping ahead, you asked me why cross border. Um, I've always loved international, and in law school, I realized I like tax. I took 6 tax courses. And in Canada, we article, which means after law school, you have to work for 1 year. So you don't really get paid as a working lawyer, as an associate, you get paid lower. It's sort of an internship, but not an internship. You needed to become a member of the bar. And I articled for the Ministry of Finance, Ontario, which was very exciting, which was in tax, provincial taxation. And provincial taxation awakened a desire to do a comparative study with state and local taxation in the US. Lisa, I'm so sorry, I hope I'm not boring you.
No, you're not
Um,
boring me.
it, so it's because when you think of tax, you don't just think of tax at the federal level. It also applies to you at the provincial level. So it also applies to you at the state level. Tax impacts you in every level, every transaction. And also you also have tax that you don't see. So when so tax can be direct, it can be indirect. And tax is so essential to raising funds for empowering our governments.
Mhm.
But it is okay. So then pulled back. Um, a tax advisor is someone necessary to preserve wealth and to create wealth. Um, it doesn't mean that one is, don't start thinking of the Irish sandwich and Apple and all that. That is something else. I just think every advisor should always have a good accountant.
Mhm.
Oh, I used the wrong word, every advisor, every person, whether it's a business person or a professional or whatever it is in life, you need to have an accountant you can trust.
And that's a hard thing
And
to find.
It's a very difficult thing to
It's a
find.
very difficult thing to find because, as I have discovered over the last couple of years, having you as my advisor, I've had a number of accountants give me bad advice, and I didn't
Right.
know I was getting bad advice until you
Uh,
explained things to me.
right. And in accountants, you have to watch out a little bit. I'm not bashing anybody here. We're just talking here. But in Canada, um, accountants can give you a retainer letter which states you can only come after us for the amount you have paid us in your, the fees we have charged. So they could put you in a structure where you have a 700,000 tax payable for bad advice, and a retainer letter limits the advice to maybe you pay 20,000 for the advice or less, and that's all you can. That's the only recourse you have. That's Canada. So, but a good accountant is the most amazing thing to find. Then you need a good banker, someone who will be by your side and help you grow your business. And when I say, I may use the word business, but we're also talking about professionals too. It's not just carrying on a business in the sense of entrepreneurship, but we're also, think about it from all routes. Everyone really needs a good banker, a good accountant, and then a good lawyer. You need a good lawyer by your side, a lawyer you can trust. I work with a lot of, I have a whole range of clients, but my young clients will call me up and just talk. I don't always have time these days, which I'm guilty of. For some reason, since COVID, there's just not enough hours, and something has happened. I don't know what. It's just like you just can't seem to catch up. But that said, find a good advisor who will be by your side for those three areas: law, accounting, and banking.
So,
and law, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tax lawyer. It can be a generalist who recognizes the problems and who can steer you in the right direction. A tax lawyer, of course, is very good to have. A tax lawyer who cares and who wants to see you progress. We often think of, you go for tax law, you just go in, you have your problem, and it's an IRS problem or a Canada Revenue Agency problem, and you deal with it, and then you say, kiss it, ass it out, right? And then you just go on your way. But that's not how it should be. Like yesterday, I sent a nasty email to a client because I did the initial structure, and then they just replicated the structure again, but without my approval, without me just looking at it, which is dumb, because in the world of tax, the law changes all the time. Every year, the law changes. In Canada, when the budget is passed, and in the US, when the House comes out with new material, like the law changes. Like 2017 for the US and 2017 in Canada, the law changed in both countries. And I thought I was going to lose my mind. And I'm still grappling with the US 2017 changes because they were so massive, as well as Canada. But the US changes were tremendous. So you can't, if you are a business person with a complicated structure, you can't assume that, the tax lawyer has put you in the structure, that it's sufficient. You need to always have it reviewed, because it changes. Like everything changes. Like you just can't go on an existing. And that brings to mind, like when you think about Apple and all these old structures that used to be in place. The OECD keeps coming out with means to try and attack aggressive structures. Will they be successful? We don't know. So I hope it didn't go on a rant.
No, you're great. You're great. So what I'm hearing you say is it's important. Like, I think depending on the size of your business, if and most of our listeners are business owners, As
Okay.
your business grows and scales in terms of its size, your tax implications change. And
Right.
so the structure that you started with might not be the structure you need now. And so
Correct.
what I'm hearing you say is that people really should have some type of a tax advisor that
Right.
can guide them at different junctures and before they make big decisions. For
Correct.
me, what I've learned about working from you is, and I hate to say this, but I just don't trust my accountants anymore. So if my accountants give me advice, I mean, I've actually interviewed Steve, so I'm going to take that back because I trust Steve.
Yeah.
And Steve was on the show. I interviewed him, so I trust Steve. Let me be clear. I have had other accountants that I have not had the same level of advice with, but what I am learning is that I need to run their tax advice by you and get a second opinion on it. And often when I get a second opinion on things from you, you have perspective and knowledge that they don't have, and you help us make better decisions. So it's almost like, when you go to the doctor and your doctor is a general practitioner, if something is going on with your health, do you want a GP to diagnose you, primary care doctor, or do you want a specialist involved? And
But
I think
this
you
is,
are that specialist.
but Lisa, this is where you have to step back. It's actually the person you're dealing with. Not all GPs are the same. Not all tax lawyers are the same. It's
Right.
the individual. So when you pick your advisors, you need the advisor that doesn't really care about the commission they're going to make as a banker,
Right.
or the lawyer that's thinking about what they're going to charge you an hourly rate. You have to think about the advisor that wants to see you succeed, because
Mhm.
you grow, we grow. You have to find the advisor with passion.
Mhm.
It probably doesn't make sense, what I'm saying. Like, you want the advisor that doesn't just turn out cookies from a cookie factory. You want the
Right.
advisor
But how do
that
you
is very
find
passionate.
those people? How do you
It's
find them?
difficult
Because,
because
it
in
was
my,
luck for me to find you. I mean, my friend Libby recommended you.
yeah,
And I remember when I just literally said, I need somebody who can advise me on my tax implication, what I need to do if I'm living in the United States and I'm, running my business while I'm down there. I need guidance. And Libby was like, Sunita's the bomb. You need to talk to Sunita. And
and
she's
she's
like,
amazing.
she said she's not cheap, but she's good. And she was 100% right. Like, you're invaluable. You're invaluable, the advice that you've given
You're
me.
being very
So,
kind, but
but how do
I
people
think
find people like you?
I think you just gotta keep me word of mouth. Like, I look at my husband. My husband's an MD, and when I met him, he would read medical books for fun, right? And so and he's amazing. So it's basically, it's the passion. It's like all of us. Like, for instance, going to a firm with a big name
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean anything,
Mm-hmm. I've
and
learned that.
that's the painful part. Just because you see the branding, it doesn't mean anything. I've seen a lot of advice given by bigger, more
Mm-hmm.
prestigious names, but it doesn't mean anything. And I don't know. I don't have. How do you find? Because I think it's word of mouth. I think it's working together with fellow business people and say, who do you use? What did they do for you? And just going that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Google works, because Google review can give you, like, I have someone who hates me on Google. And I don't know who it is. And I've had it removed a few times, but I'll keep coming back and putting the dumbest of things. And I know somebody I have not met, because the things they say. I find a good advisor. I think all of us struggle with the three things: the accountant, the bank, the lawyer. And what I just wanted to, because you work with business people, succession planning is so crucial as well. Like, when you're not just dealing with the advisor who can help you create wealth, but you also need the advisors who are going to help you keep that wealth and grow that wealth. And that's a difficult one. For instance, when I was 12, my stepfather passed, and he left me with a trust. And the trustees were not in the same continent we were living in. And they totally, disregarded my mother and I. The wealth didn't last very long. And from that, I learned always have people you trust. And for wealthy individuals who have built wealth, you have to have advisors by your side who the next generation can trust. And that's really not always an easy handover.
No, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about what you see. So, when you're working with business owners, what are some of the reasons why they would need to have a tax advisor like you, for example? Like, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about in terms of getting that type of support?
In today's day and world, because you have business people that are listening to you, in today's day and world, you have a lot of remote workers. So when you have remote workers amongst your staff, you have to worry about whether they're pulling your business into a tax jurisdiction you really were not meant to be. Like, for example, suppose you have someone, I'm going to just make this up. Someone working has decided to come to you and said, and it's your right hand. That person actually signs contracts, makes management decisions, and he or she says, okay, we're going to go to Mexico. So you're going to have to be very careful that when that person's in Mexico working remotely, they're not triggering a tax jurisdiction. They're not subjecting your business, they're not pulling your business into the taxing jurisdiction of Mexico. Mexico is just an example. I mean, you've seen people go all over the place, Spain, etc. And that is something always to worry about. Second thing, expanding your business. Suppose you the corporate structures, like what structure should you be using? And if you're expanding into selling into a different internationally, where should your sales office be? Should it be it could be in a lower tax jurisdiction? These are things to think about, even though the OECD has been coming after structures. Expansion of your business. What other thing? I mean, succession. That, do you need a trust for your young ones? Do you need to worry about, even if there are no kids, what happens to you and your spouse for succession planning? In Canada, we have the concept of estate freezes, like that is like how for succession planning. Also, what I see a lot, because what we're having a lot in Canada right now, is private equity buying up smaller businesses, meaning business valuation at 20 to 50 million. And you're seeing, so when those businesses sell, what is the right structure they should have had in place to go ahead and sell? The structures in Canada are available, they're not available in the US. If you're going to sell, we have a lifetime capital gains exemption. You don't have that, but then you have other things that we don't have. These are all issues where you would need an advisor to come in.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make when it comes to tax that ends up costing them a lot more money than it should when it comes to running their business?
What I see when, for instance, what I just said yesterday, the client copies the structure but doesn't realize the law has changed. Or I remember what I see often, you will see Canadians moving into the US and thinking, oh, like moving operations into the US, and they think, okay, we'll just use an accountant in Chicago to do the returns and everything will be fine. But the problem is that the accountant in Chicago is not really familiar with cross-border and does not realize that certain information returns have to be filed with the IRS, and there's a 25,000 US dollar penalty the IRS issues when certain forms are not filed. So there are always issues. I mean, these are, so you'd have to be wary of, oh my goodness, I don't want to sound like who you hire as an advisor, but there'll always be so I've seen mistakes like that, and I've seen mistakes where a client goes to a I've seen where a client believes they're going to a cross-border advisor, but the cross-border advisor doesn't truly work with the other jurisdiction, or the other jurisdiction advisor is not really, doesn't know all the small nuances. I've seen, and then you also see people get into trouble where advisors are human too. You got to remember that. And not every, I mean, you will see a lot of very good advisors who will make silly mistakes because they're so busy. And I think that's everyone's biggest fear. Oh my goodness, I am so busy. Let's hope I don't overlook something, like in a rollover, that I don't overlook that what I think can be rolled over really can't be rolled over.
When it comes to, remote work, so, people are deciding, hey, I want to spend, 6 months in the United States and 6 months in Canada.
Right.
What are some of the things that they should be thinking about when it comes to taxes? Like, when I know if you're in the United States for over 6 months, you need to seriously consider taxes. But if someone is operating their business in the United States and it's under the 6-month period, are there things that they should be aware of?
First of all, the US is not really a 6-month thing. The US does a day count. It looks at a 3-day. So it's a 1/3, 1/6, and then all the days in the present year the person is spending. The 6 months thing is a Canadian concept, a Canadian common law concept, and then you have to look at the tax treaty. But what you need to be careful about with a remote worker is the remote worker can be triggering tax. Suppose you have a US person who goes to Canada for 6 months and starts working there as a remote worker, that the being in Canada would oblige the US employer to payroll tax withholding to the CRA, because here you have an employee working in Canada. And you need to be very careful on the roles the employee is carrying out in Canada. Right? Are they creating a permanent establishment, which means a taxable presence for the American employer? So there are tax consequences to the individual themselves and also to the employer. So it's so these are the things you need to be wary about. And in the old days, meaning in the COVID days, there were exemptions under every country had, okay, remote workers, we're not going to tax them as if they're not here. But COVID is over. So what applied during COVID doesn't necessarily apply now. And for that, you need to be very careful.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think a lot of people just try to pretend that things aren't happening, right? They don't know who to go to get advice. So they just act like things are the status quo. And, you can get yourself into tax problem when you don't know what the rules are and you don't play by the rules. So I know for me, when we decided that we wanted to stay in the United States for at least 2 years on our E1 visa, it was really important to me to understand what that meant from a tax perspective, because
Right.
I didn't want to jeopardize my ability to come in and out of the United States because we own property here. And
Right.
I also didn't want to pay too much in taxes because I didn't have someone guiding me on how to structure and pay taxes for things to the Canadian government versus, the US government. So it's tricky. It's not a simple thing for people to find out on their own.
No, no, it's not tricky. And also, what you have to realize, if you have Canadians, because you have Canadian listeners as well, right?
Mhm. Yes.
So, I mean, for Canadians that come into the US and suppose they only come for a very short period of time, they need to be cognizant that even though they don't become subject to income tax payable to the US, or if they have income tax payable, they got to be careful that they're not deemed to be domiciled in the US, because for US estate and gift tax purposes, the test is now how many days you're in the US. It's on the domicile, the intent.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a dangerous concept for Canadians. Currently, the exemption for US estate tax is 12.75, which is less under the treaty because we only get a part of it. But it's going back to 5 point something in 2025. So it lowers. So US estate tax and gift tax is something that one has to be wary about. So with a remote worker, when they're going to all these jurisdictions, it's not just income tax they got to be worried about, but it's also, hey, do these jurisdictions have a wealth tax? Do they have a debt tax that I don't know about? If I spend some time here, does it mean, because the European countries, the majority of them do.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be cognizant of when you are a remote worker. And I know for young people, they just take their laptop and go.
Mm-hmm.
But whose responsibility is to guide a remote worker? Is it the employer that is supposed to say, hey, okay, you're going to be working in Aruba, or a tax team has said this, this, and this, or is it up to the employee? That's
Mm-hmm.
also, I think, I find a bit fishy. I know our employment lawyers here get all worked up when there's a remote worker and they get advice on what the repercussions are to both parties, which makes sense, right? Because the employee is actually providing services for you in the overseas territory and you,
Right.
right? So it's a whole different world now. The remote worker was just an example. The other example is selling services on to the digital.
Mm-hmm.
And how is that taxed? So it's a whole new world order which keeps changing continuously as we're speaking.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned young people. I have one final question for you. So I was creeping you on Instagram,
Ah,
and I see that you have two beautiful daughters who recently graduated.
yeah, yes,
And are they twins?
they're twins, identical
Yeah.
twins.
Yeah, I thought they were identical twins.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, as their mom and as the professional you are, what is one piece of advice that you would give new young entrepreneurs around tax and related to their ability to generate wealth? So if you were giving your daughters one piece of advice on something they should do related to how they structure things from a tax perspective to protect and preserve their wealth as they grow into, successful young women, what would that be?
So I shared my accountant with them, but that's not necessarily a good thing because he's my age or older and they're young.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they also have our banker, but our banker is again the same age, which makes no sense. They need to find good advisors they need to do the same thing all over again. And that worries me a little bit. So they're 25. So my ideal sweet spot is if I could find them a good accountant who's 30 and pray that nothing happens to this accountant, and also a good banker, and they're both lawyers. So I mean, I'll be there from a tax perspective, but if I drop dead, I would be worried.
Don't say that.
I no, but finding, I mean, from a legal perspective, I always say to young people, surround yourself with good mentors. Surround yourself with people who will bring you up. Like always have, I mean, you have, Libby, like always have good people around you, and you all succeed together, and you all prop each other up.
So start young, start building those relationships and that network of advisors from the very beginning.
You have to.
I love your advice about having a relationship with your banker. We have always had a relationship with our banker too. And, you know, unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of decisions in banking are made through technology. They're not made through people. But when you develop a good relationship with a banker, there are sometimes ways that they can help you that the average person can't get help with because of those relationships. So I think that that's really, really smart advice.
I think I would just tell everybody, just walk into your local bank, meet the bank manager, scope them out, then walk to the next branches and keep going until you find someone. Because we still have branches, at least here, that you can walk into. I mean, they're becoming less with people, but you need that banker.
Yeah,
you need
for sure.
The lawyer. And for young people, you need them closer to your age, but maybe have someone older in the background, of course. But you need good young people when you're young, in your own age group, to keep you. Yeah.
The other thing I would say related to banking is there is a thing called private banking, and a lot of people may not know about private banking. You have to have a certain amount of wealth to qualify for private banking, and there is an annual fee that you pay to have access to private banking. But if you can afford that and you can do that, I have found private banking to be an exceptional resource because it allows you access to people who I think take better care of you than just the people at the branch level. It's a different level of service. So if you're out of the country and you need something, you can email someone, call someone, and they will do whatever is needed to be done to help you.
I can remember a client took me to MIPCOM, which is a film festival in Cannes, and my Visa card got blocked because it was out of country, and private client, they got it working within 15 minutes.
That's great.
Can you imagine if I didn't have them? So I hope that is a service that will always stay. But yes, you're absolutely right about private clients. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
To mention that on the call. Yeah,
it's, not a lot of people know about it, right? And once you know about it and you've used the service, I think we pay, I'm not sure, I think it's like $1,500 a year, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, because I can reach out to somebody via email, and if I need a wire transfer, I need to, like, whatever it is that I need to do. And it's not just personally either. When I sold my retail business back in 2012, it was the relationship that we had with our bankers that really helped us to facilitate that sale, because there was some kind of tricky stuff that was going to go on between, making sure that certain payments happened when they were supposed to happen during the actual closing period. And if you don't have relationships with banks, then if you are in a sale situation, you can run into problems.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So, all right.
Right.
Any other final thoughts? Any last minutes or last pieces of advice or wisdom that you would like to impart on us?
Banks can also provide you with advisors too. Like when you were talking about private banking, all private bankers know advisors. Like I get a lot of work through private banking. Private banker will send me clients, and because once again, everyone finds it difficult to find an advisor.
Right.
So
That's
you
a
have
great
to rely
tip.
on who you trust. So, you know, so if you, but as a recourse, you can think of private banking to find an advisor. I
Yeah,
hope
that's
this
actually a
makes
really good
sense.
point. Yeah, you could ask your private banker to refer you, and they will
Yes,
know some of the people that are
they
highly
do.
thought of. Yeah, for sure.
Bankers always go out and meet people on the street, because bankers is something that increased their value for them to be
Mhm,
able to recommend. They will never just give one name. They'll have to
mhm,
give a list of names, because you can't be biased in case something goes wrong and whatever. So
mhm,
the bankers always know who's who on the street.
mhm.
Always. I mean, I have bankers who contact me all the time from Florida. Like they're everywhere and anywhere. Like bankers, that's the one amazing thing.
Yeah. Thank
And,
you.
and
Good advice.
yeah, and trust companies. Most Americans have trust, that have worked with trust
Mhm.
companies the same.
Cool. Good to know. Thank you, Sunita, so much for your input, your valuable advice, and your time. I said at the very beginning, I have the utmost respect for you and everything that you know in this space. And I'm really grateful that I found you and that I have a relationship with you. And I hope that people listening here, if you don't have an advisor, that you start thinking about having an advisor like Sunita in your courts, so that you learn more about tax implications within your own country, cross border, so that you can protect your business. I mean, we all want to do what is right in terms of paying our taxes, but sometimes there are loopholes and structures and things that you can do in your business that can save you a lot of money. And these are not shady things. These are legal things that you can do. But if you don't know about those things, then you run the risk of paying more taxes than you need. So if your business is of a size where you look at your tax bill and you think, wow, that's a lot of money, then you might want to invest a little bit of money in learning how to keep some of that lot of money that you're paying in taxes.
Lisa, thank you for having me. You know, I'm a great admirer of you, and I'm flattered that you asked me to be on. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, you are so welcome. Thank you for being there. And for all of you listening, you can find Sunita's information in our show notes. And I appreciate you listening, and we will see you again next time.